start talking about this engagement piece, a lot of people will sit here and go, what? Well, it's all about trying to make your employees happy. Is that what you think this is about? Because if you're trying to make people happy, the only way you're going to be able to do that is give them the keys to the car and let them drive off with it, right? You have to turn everything over to them and then hope it works. But that's not the way things work in this world, is it? We still have to have guidance. We still need to have involvement. Management still needs to be in part of this process. Nowhere in this are we talking about turning everything over to the inmates to run. What we're talking about is everyone has to be involved in this process, and it has to be, this is that engagement piece to where everyone's working together in that process. So you want people that are actively engaged. So Gallup, who comes up with these studies, identified that engaged employees are those who are 100% psychologically committed to their work. 100% psychologically committed to what you're trying to accomplish within your organization. Now, part of that, though, is, and this is what Mac came up with, he says, this is where I like to use this saying. He says, he's about as engaged as a kamikaze pilot on his 18th mission. Now, you can take that one of two ways, right? He failed 17 times. I would think that if he wasn't getting it right after a short period of time, that he would no longer be a kamikaze pilot, right? But what he's trying to say is that one, this guy is experienced because he's on his 18th mission apparently. Now we all know that that's not possible, but that you have somebody that's experienced and is committed to what they do. What they know what they're doing, and they're committed to that particular task. Well, most people got to have that connection to where I come to work and I have a new challenge today. And to be honest with you, that's what really genned me up with the military when I was a jet engine mechanic, because every day we had 3 shifts. Every shift you come in, you got something new to work on, because at the end of your shift, you give it to someone else, they complete that job, you come in the next day, you got a completely new job to work, right? I find now the same paperwork that I left on my desk is the same paperwork I come back the next morning with, right? So it's a little bit more challenging. So for folks, they have to find different outlets and different ways of doing things. So with my job, 50% of my job is coming out here, and this is what gens me up. This is what makes me engaged. This is what I enjoy, is coming out and having contact with you folks. The other part of my job is doing QA work, for the people that are out in the field. That's not as much fun. Has a little bit more negative connotation to it. So when you're looking at that, yeah, this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to find out how to get those people involved. But the main thing to keep in mind is you're challenging those people to do more than just stay in that job description. You're asking them to step outside of the box. You're asking them to commit a little bit more to what you're trying to accomplish as an organization. You want them involved in that entire process, right? And so that's where this 100% psychologically committed to their work part comes into play, is that you got these people moving in that particular direction, okay? So some reports estimate that disengaged employees cost the U.S. economy about $350 billion a year. That toxic, that only 3% have that much of effect on the economy. So I think it's huge when we think about trying to identify what are some of the things that happen with different folks and how can we track that down. In some cases, you guys already know who some of those toxic people are. We all know who they are, don't we? So it's easy to kind of track that down. And so if you're in a management position, that's the area that you probably want to try and insulate a little bit more. They might be doing a really great job for you, but they're kind of working against themselves in that other part where they're projecting their attitude, okay? So where does safety come into this then? Well, this is all fine and good. Let's get people engaged. Yeah, that's going to be a good thing, but how does safety kind of fall into this? Well, safety falls in the fact that they did this study, and this is a Gallup study in 2009. They did 199 studies that covered, 152 organizations, 44 industries, or 26 countries, with 23 of those organizations absolutely having no contact with the U.S. Okay, so they had that part where they kind of leveled things out and took a look at things, okay? And so this is what they found. So what they took was they took the top 25%, measured it against the bottom 25%, okay, off of this study. And what they found was that those companies that were in the top 25% had 16% more profitability, 18% more productivity. Their customers were 12% happier with those organizations. And so these are the organizations they identified as having employee engagement pieces, okay? Your absenteeism for those top 25% was 37% lower. In other words, employees came to work on a regular basis. You didn't have as much absenteeism as you'd normally have. In those companies that had high turnovers of employees, natural high turnover, for instance, maybe seasonal, some of those kind of things, that they found that they were actually 25% lower when they had engaged employees, okay? The low turnover organizations were actually 49% lower. So that's really a huge jump if you think about you're not losing many employees in the first place, but now you even cut that in half almost. So that they're really involved with that. I think it's important to talk about shrinkage because that's the pilferage that happens with your employees. And I've heard a lot of owners from time to time complain about how much stuff goes home with the employees. But they looked at, that was actually 27% lower with engaged employees and the fact that they didn't pilfer from the company. That they, again, being 100% psychologically behind the organization, they were less likely to take things that the organization needed, okay? The quality of the defects, the defects part, quality of the defects. No, quality was actually up, but they measured it in the fact that there were less defects. So there were actually 60% less defects with employees that were engaged in those top 25% companies.